Hello and welcome to the QTV News Desk. With me, Chitalo Chinsenge. Top stories in the news. Government says the Financial Intelligence Center erred by availing to the public intelligence information that should have first been presented to the law enforcement agencies. Finance Minister Margaret Mwanakatoi has issued a statutory instrument number 42 of 2018, bringing into effect the Public Finance Management Act number 1 of 2018. And the Foundation for Democratic Process has noted the lack of political leadership in the country to end political violence. And now the news in detail. Government says the Financial Intelligence Center has broken internal communication channels by availing to the public information that was first supposed to be reported to government and law enforcement agencies. Addressing a media briefing, Lusaka Chief Government Spokesperson, who is also Minister of Information and Broadcasting Services, Doris Leah, explained that the information gathered by the FIC is intelligence information, which can be regarded as rumors, which is why it is first supposed to be reported to the law enforcement agencies such as the ACC, the DEC, and the police for further investigation, verification, and prosecution. Ms. Celia says government is currently conducting internal consultations and discussions regarding the design of the FIC made to public intelligence information before it was presented to law enforcement agencies. The chief government spokesperson states that by revealing the information to the public, the FIC has rendered the report irrelevant because the public has been made to start judging the people mentioned in the report before they can be prosecuted by relevant authorities.
There's a debate going on now that the internal whistleblower should report internally and not to the court of public opinion before the work can be done internally. Do you follow? That the internal whistleblower is an internal whistleblower and should disseminate that information to the relevant organization within government so that these issues can then be further investigated and verified. Do you follow what I'm saying? I think that the dispute with many members of the public and the legal minds is whether the internal whistleblower should now become the public whistleblower, because I think that's where the debate is. I think that's where the live debate is, and I think he captured it very well, the other gentleman. So between you and me, there's no dispute in the IFC being an internal whistleblower within government. That's why it was created, within government, to say, you know what, I think why don't you, SCC, investigate this matter? Why? So that when now there's a clearer picture, then maybe the SCC can say, we have something to share with the public because we have verified. There are processes within government. There are processes. Intelligence within government, within internal controls, is shared within government. And the SCC never fails to do this job in this country. We must always have confidence. The SCC never fails to do its job in this country. It will investigate rumors and say these are rumors. It will investigate real things and take people to court. I don't think the SCC has ever failed to do that in this country. I don't think so.
Meanwhile, Ms. Leah says those complaining that there has not been enough consultation regarding the cyber bills should wait until the matter reaches committee stage in Parliament to air their concerns and make available their contributions.
Education and understanding how government works. When government is creating laws, it does not just wake up one day that the Minister of Transport and Communication, who's responsible for these laws, just wakes up and says, I'm going to draft laws. For those of you that just did basic civics in primary, secondary school, or even a primary school, you understand how laws are made. First, there's an initiation by the minister in charge, in this case, the Minister of Transport. And then thereafter, there's consultation with various bodies before even a draft goes to Parliament. And even when it goes to Parliament, there are committees that call for relevant stakeholders before it even comes to the floor. So I just think that it is fear of the unknown. I think it is fear to appreciate the process of how laws are made. Because if you know how laws are made in this country, laws, even before they come on the floor of the House, there are processes where stakeholders are invited to go and make their case before the committee. But even before it gets to Parliament, to the committee, the minister himself and the Ministry of Justice, before these laws are drafted, there are also stakeholder meetings. So I think that my message to any interested party out there is that they have nothing to fear, because the bills have not even come to Parliament yet, but the processes of consultation has been ongoing. Now let me say one thing that's important. Please don't equate cyber laws with the media. That is wrong. Okay?
And the minister has condemned in the strongest terms the reported attacks on some journalists during the just-ended Chilanga by-election, noting the need for journalists to be allowed to work freely without fear of being attacked by any political party leader or supporters. Mr. Leah has, however, advised journalists against acting in a way that will make the public or political parties perceive them as being politically inclined, as this can invite attacks from losing parties during elections.
The media should never be found in the middle, where one side says you are our people, the other side says you are our people. No. I think the media should never find itself polarized in that way, where people say this media is for this side, that media is for this side. Because if that happens, then people begin to think that you two are part of the failure or the win. I think what's important for the media is to continue, as we have been talking in the last weeks, to be professional, to be investigative, to be passionate about our work, so that we should never be misunderstood. And we have to condemn those who, whether because they've won or because they have lost, think that they should take it out on the media. And I think this is a song we have to sing about the profession, that we must never find ourselves being thought of this side or this side, so that when people win or lose, they accuse you of being this side or this side. And I think that as government, we totally condemn an incident where media personnel should be threatened by politicians in an election. I think it must be condemned in the highest order by everyone, especially by the media itself. One thing government would like to see, no journalist should feel unsafe in going to cover a situation. We don't have a war in Zambia for a journalist to feel unsafe. We don't. A journalist should be able to move anywhere in this country, doing their job freely, just like any citizen. If we continue not to condemn violence, only condemn it when it suits us, then you see that violence has no color, violence has no name of the media. It can be anyone, isn't it?
Finance Minister Margaret Monakatwe has issued a statutory instrument number 42 of 2018, which brings into effect the Public Finance Management Act number 1 of 2018, which has been strengthened. In a statement made available to Q News, Mrs. Monakatwe says the statutory instrument number 42 of 2018, the Public Financial Management Act, Commencement Order 2018, was gazetted and published by the government printer on the 30th of May 2018, Wednesday. She says it is envisaged that with effective enforcement of the Public Finance Management Act number 1 of 2018, transparency and accountability in public finance management in Zambia will tremendously improve. Mrs. Monakatwe says incidences of misuse and theft of public resources will also be reduced and ultimately eliminated. She states that this will have a positive impact on resource allocation and eventually improve public service delivery. The Finance Minister adds that in accordance with the Act, any person who breaches provisions of the Public Finance Management Act number 1 of 2018 will be fined, suspended, demoted, dismissed, or prosecuted accordingly. She further states that the Act has been embedded with provisions to facilitate the operation of the Treasury Single Account and the Integrated Financial Information Management System. She explains that in this regard, the Act will provide a platform for further regulation of electronic financial transactions within the framework of public financial management. Mrs. Monakatwe says this is in line with government's e-government policy and is expected to reduce operational costs, improve resource allocation, promote efficiency in management of public resources, and enhance public service delivery. She adds that with effect from 30th May 2018, the Gazette date for the Public Finance Management Act Commencement Order 2018, board members of the state-owned enterprises and statutory corporations will individually and severely be accountable for their decisions. She says this is aimed at improving the levels of decision, morality, transparency, accountability, and integrity among persons in positions of accountability. Mrs. Manakato has further stated that the Public Finance Management Act No. 1 of 2018 also empowers the Secretary to the Treasury to deal with non-performing controlling officers and controlling bodies. The Patriotic Front's Maria Langa is a new Chilanga Member of Parliament following the tightly contested election held on Tuesday, the 5th of June. Ms. Langa polled 7,226 votes, beating her closest rival UPND's Shemaine Musonda, who polled 6,410 votes. UPPZ's Francis Kope came in distant third with 204 votes, with NAREP's Charlie Mazabuka trailing in fourth place with a paltry 92 votes. Returning Officer Wilbert Walia declared Mrs. Langa as duly elected Member of Parliament in the early hours of Wednesday. A total of 14,121 votes were cast. Meanwhile, the ruling Patriotic Front PF says its victory in the just-ended Chilanga parliamentary by-election is a clear signal of what is expected in the 2021 general elections. Addressing journalists in Lusaka, PF Media Director Sunday Chanda says a victory in Chilanga shows that the people of Zambia still have confidence in the leadership of President Edgar Lungu and the Patriotic Front. Mr. Chanda says the UPND and other opposition parties should start preparing for another humiliation in 2021 elections because the PF will retain power due to its transformative agenda. He says it is clear that the opposition strategy of insulting President Lungu and calling his government names aimed at turning the Zambian people against the government is not working. He says that President Lungu is gaining popularity with every single election. Mr. Chanda states that if UPND cannot change its leadership, they are gone for good.
But more so, this election is a loss not for Shemaine Musonda. This election is a loss for Hakainde Hichilema. And this is the more reason why there are rumblings around leadership in the UPND, because they know clearly that the rank and file of the UPND are fatigued with Hakainde Hichilema leadership. Like in any organization, he has overstayed his welcome. And the best that the UPND can do, if at all they are serious about survival, is to seriously consider the question of leadership change. Otherwise, they risk suffering the fate of the dinosaur. The reason why we no longer have the dinosaur around is because the dinosaur refused to adapt to a changing environment. And the UPND is likely to be a clear case of that dinosaur which refused to adapt. And the consequences, the fate, is extinction from the political space.
But Economic and Equity Party President Chilufya Tayali says the ruling Patriotic Front should not think that by winning by-elections they are gaining popularity. Mr. Tayali says to the contrary, this is because UPND President Hakainde Hichilema, who is the main opposition leader, is not using his political strength and capacity in the best way. He adds that the PF is also winning because of its position as the party in power.
Nonetheless, we would like to appeal to Mr. Hakainde Hichilema to also evaluate himself. He needs to take stock of his political career, because at the moment, things don't look good. I mean, if you look at where we are coming from the last elections, where he performed so well, and where we are today, things don't look good for him. Things don't look good for him. And from our point of view, we actually wish we had the kind of support and resources that Mr. Hakainde Hichilema is enjoying at the moment. But we don't think he's using the numbers that he has, the resources that he has, to really give the PF those checks and balances which would in turn give him some good results during the time of elections. Nonetheless,
The opposition UPND says the just ended Chilanga parliamentary by-election was total warfare and not an election. UPND Secretary General Stephen Katuka says there is no way that what happened in Chilanga can be referred to as an election considering the amount of ammunition and tear gas used on the electorate. Mr. Katuka says what is concerning to his party is that the said ammunition and tear gas was allegedly used by political cadres, an indication that the police was infuriated. In an interview with QTV News, Mr. Katuka says the ruling PF can claim that they won the election, the by-election, but that the circumstances under which they won the election are questionable. Mr. Katuka has, however, encouraged UPND members to remain united and hardworking in ensuring that the party reclaims the seat in the next election. Asked whether the UPND will petition the results of the election, Mr. Katuka says a decision has not yet been made by the party leadership, which is yet to meet.
Well, the elections are over, but the effects of the election are still here. You can see what is in front of me. That was not an election, it was total war. You can see that these canisters I'm holding here, or I'm displaying to you, were being used by PF cadres in the Chilanga by-election. This is government property, which is only supposed to be held by the police. But you can see this is a round of an AK-47, which was being used by PF cadres. These are canisters used by PF cadres. How they access them, we don't know. We tend to feel that the police is infiltrated by the PF cadres. No wonder that they give instructions to the to the police, because they are more powerful than the police. These instruments you see here were all used in Chilanga. I was saying, well, they could have won the election, but the circumstances under which they won the election are questionable. For us as a party, we just advise our people to continue working hard and be united, and see to it that we will reclaim our seat back next election. Well,
Foundation for Democratic Process FODEP says violence that marred voting in some polling stations in the Chilanga parliamentary by-election shows a lack of political leadership in the country to end political violence. FODEP Executive Director Mwengechi Mfumbe has told Q News by telephone that had political leaders demonstrated true leadership, the Chilanga by-election would not have recorded any incidences of violence. He says this is because political leaders have the power to command their members not to engage in violence. Mr. Chimfumbe says in some polling stations where his organization monitored the by-election, some cadres were seen intimidating electorates and causing confusion, which should not be the case in a democratic nation like Zambia. He has implored political leaders to show true leadership and avoid using youths as tools of violence. And Mr. Chimfumbe says it is not FODEP's mandate to declare an election free and fair or otherwise. He says FODEP will continue pointing out areas which need to be addressed by the Electoral Commission of Zambia. And the anti-voter apathy project, AVAP, has expressed concern over the voter apathy that characterized the just-ended Chilanga parliamentary by-election. AVAP Executive Director Richwell Mulwani tells QTV News that the voter turnout of about 14,000 out of a total registered voters of 49,000 is an indication of voter apathy. Mr. Mulwani has attributed this to political violence, intimidation, and vote buying that characterized the by-election. He says going forward, it is important that stakeholders such as political parties, the Electoral Commission of Zambia, and the Zambia Police Service, among others, engage in voter education to avoid such occurrences in the coming elections. Mr. Mulwani fears that if this is not addressed now, the nation will witness the worst voter apathy in the 2021 elections.
That violence was one of the issues that characterized the Chilanga by-election, and also that there was intimidation, vote buying, and the lack of proper messaging in terms of what the people of Chiranga wanted to hear. And also the bad road network. There's no development in Chiranga. Chiranga is, most of the areas are farmlands. And when you look at the way the area is designed, you can even tell that I think the people are not interested in elections. So we need to address that. When you look at the road network, it's very, very bad. Look at the clinics, very, very bad. So there's nothing that you can actually tangible development that you can see in Chiranga. So to us as ABAP, we feel that the people of Chiranga are tired of voting, and also they don't see the value of electing leaders. So to us as ABAP, we feel that I think these are some of the issues that we want to look into and help in the situation. That
The Lusaka High Court has adjourned to 14th June 2018 the matter in which a 30-year-old woman of Kanyama compound is alleged to have set on fire her 12-year-old daughter for stealing 7 kwacha. Prudence Piri is alleged to have poured a 5-liter container of kerosene on her daughter before setting her ablaze. When she tried to put off the fire but failed, she called for help from her neighbors, who rescued the girl, rushed her to the hospital, but she later died from her burns at the University Teaching Hospital on the 5th of September 2017. Facts before the court are that Piri banned her daughter as an act of discipline for stealing 7 kwacha. But when the matter came up for commencement of trial, High Court Judge Mwilakombe adjourned the matter to the 14th of June because the arresting officer had not prepared witnesses. Transparency International Zambia TRZ has signed a $3.4 million United States dollar agreement with Swedish International Development Corporation Agency SIDA to help in implementation of its 2018-2022 strategic plan. TRZ chapter president Ruben Lefoka says TRZ has realized the need to continue implementing robust programs and projects that will support the reduction of corruption and the promotion of good governance in the country. Speaking during the signing ceremony, Mr. Lefoka says the support from SIDA is testimony enough that all stakeholders are interested in bettering the country by ridding it of corruption and bad governance practices. He notes that the Corruption Perception Index has placed Zambia among the poorest performing countries with a score of 37 out of a possible 100 for the past 4 years. Mr. Lefoka states that the fact that this situation is not improving, it calls for TRZ to be innovative in its strategic plan and re-engineer its strategies to make them more effective.
And a lot of efforts, therefore, will be targeted at enhancing and promoting good governance. Ultimately, when we fight corruption, we should aim to achieve good governance. And in this plan, we'll promote transparency, accountability, integrity, democracy, the rule of law, and human rights. The notion is that once these areas are improved, we should see the prevalence of corruption reducing. We are therefore very honored that SIDA has come on board, and we believe that having right partners with us will enable us to achieve the goals that we've set out in the strategic plan. It's important to emphasize that what SIDA is supporting is a strategic plan that is homegrown. This is a Transparency International strategic plan and not SIDA strategic plan. SIDA have bought into what we have proposed to undertake in the next couple of years, and that is what they are supporting. It is our intention to influence change at 2 levels in the next couple of years. Namely, we want to look at systemic change at the institution and policy level, and we equally want to look at attitude and behavioral change at personal level. Therefore, we'll be focusing on individuals, on communities, on people. Systemic change will entail changes in legal, policy, and institutional frameworks in order to strengthen these systems that support good governance and anti-corruption. And this will be done through research, advocacy, as well as submission on institutional, legal, and policy reforms, capacity development, and stakeholder engagement.
Speaking at the same event, SIDA Executive Head of Mission Karin Zverkan says SIDA is happy to be partnering with TRZ at a time when President Edgar Lungu has repeatedly pronounced his commitment to fight against corruption. Ms. Zverkan has since advised TRZ to use the resources in a way that maximizes the benefit to the ordinary Zambians and lead by example in being a transparent and accountable organization.
You also heard that we know that according to the Transparency International, corruption has been and remains a substantial impediment to good governance and development in Zambia. And we know that corruption remains a serious obstacle to development as it undermines democracy, good governance, human rights, and prevents efficient use of resources. And we see resources end up being diverted from health, education, and other essential services. And as Sweden, we will soon get a new cooperation strategy with Zambia, which will be very much aligned to the 7th National Development Plan, which we think is a robust and strong plan. And we will have a strong focus on democracy, human rights, the rule of law, and gender equality. Access to information, anti-corruption, good governance, and transparency interventions are all fundamental to the realization of a democratic society in Zambia or elsewhere. And we very much welcome TIZ's new strategic plan, whose goal is really to contribute to reduce corruption and promote good governance in Zambia.
The Media Institute of Southern Africa, Mr. Zambia, has expressed disappointment with the acts of violence and intimidation against journalists in the course of their duty during the just-ended by-election in Chilanga and Mwese. In a statement, Mr. Zambia Vice Chairperson Heidi Ihagota says MISA is concerned with the numerous reports of journalists' lives being threatened by political party supporters, a traditional leader, and the office of the president. Mr. Hagota says according to reports MISA has monitored, Luapula Community Radio has been receiving demands for copies of its programs incessantly from the office of the president special division. He says at the same time, a named traditional leader who was publicly campaigning for a certain political party in 2018 has continued to intimidate sections of his community and media workers whom he perceives to be against the political party of his preference. Mr. Hagota says Mr. Zambia is further worried with reports indicating that a journalist from Movie TV, Oscar Piri, was harassed in Mwese by suspected patriotic party supporters on the 4th of June in the same area. He adds that another sad report monitored by Mr. Zambia is where suspected UPND cadres, numbering over 20, attacked journalists in Chilanga who were headed for the totaling center a few minutes after midnight on the 5th of June 2018. He says the journalists who were fished out of the car by force were accused of having stolen votes, with one of the cadres suggesting that the journalists should be shot dead. Mr. Hagota says Mr. Zambia demands that these side developments must stop henceforth. Trial in the case in which 4 people, including police officers, are charged with manslaughter for allegedly causing the death of Zambia Air Force officer Mark Chongwa in police cells at Woodlands Police Station in March 2017 has failed to take place after one of the accused, James Ngulube, fell sick. In this matter, Police Chief Inspector Veronica Lusishawa, Mike Kapale, also a police officer, Lyston Mwale, a driver, and James Ngulube, an archives officer, are charged with manslaughter, contrary to Section 199 of the Penal Code, Cap 87 of the Laws of Zambia. It is alleged that the accused caused the death of Chongwa between March 17 and March 18, 2017, when the matter came up for commencement of trial on Wednesday morning before Lusaka High Court Judge Mwilakombe. The defense asked for an adjournment as one of their clients was unwell and could not stand trial. But Judge Kombe stood down the matter and requested that the defense produce documentation to prove that Ngulube was indeed sick. When the matter came up in the afternoon, the defense presented a sick note before the court, which prompted Judge Kombe to adjourn the matter to the 11th of June 2018 for commencement of trial. The Southern African Center for Constructive Resolution of Disputes, SACORD, has commended government for agreeing to the proposed bill on torture spearheaded by various human rights groups in the country. SACOT Executive Director Boniface Chembe is of the firm belief that once enacted into law, the bill will minimize incidences of torture in the country. Mr. Chembe tells Q News that once torture is eradicated, the country will be able to consolidate the democratization process by ensuring that people enjoy greater human rights. He states that inasmuch as legislative processes take long, it is hoped that the processes regarding the enactment of the bill on torture will soon be exhausted so that the country can see a law being put in place to eradicate torture.
Well, as SACOT, we commend the government for having agreed on the proposed bill on torture that was spearheaded by a number of stakeholders, namely the Human Rights Commission, the Zambia Law Development Commission, SACOT, among others. We believe that this bill, once enacted into law, will go a long way in minimizing incidences of the prevalence of torture in the country, but most desirably eradicating their prevalence, so that as a country we continue to democratize or consolidate our democratization process by ensuring that our people enjoy greater human rights because of the legal framework or environment that is provided for by their country. We understand that legislative processes take time because they have to go through various channels and they have to go through various government procedures. We hope that sooner rather than later these processes and procedures will be exhausted and the country will begin to see a process in earnest of putting in place a law on torture as a result of the proposed bill on torture that was spearheaded for a number of years by the stakeholders that
Pharmaceutical Society of Zambia, PSZ, is disturbed with reports of drug stockouts at the University Teaching Hospital, UTH. PSZ President Dr. David Banda tells Q News that this is a drawback in service delivery. Mr. Banda, however, says it is wrong to accuse pharmacists at the hospital of taking the drugs to their private pharmacies. He adds that it is also wrong to accuse pharmacists of referring patients to their private pharmacies. Dr. Banda says it is important that those with information report such cases to relevant authorities so that if there are pharmacists in the country doing such things, they can be dealt with accordingly.
The insinuation that pharmacists are stealing drugs or creating artificial shortages, that is not true. Our role as a pharmacist is to dispense the medicines which government has bought, and if government hasn't bought those medicines, there's nothing to dispense. We can substitute, but if you don't have any alternative, what are you going to substitute to? So therefore, that mentality of our public that the pharmacist is hiding drugs or creating artificial shortages is not true. Above all, I think in my conclusion, I would say that let the public come out, forward those names, not necessarily to me, not necessarily to the head of pharmacy, but they can go to the police, they can go to the ministry and report such culprits so that they're dealt with once and for all. I'm urging all our members out there to remain steadfast and basically our duties diligently for the interest of the public and for the best.
The Zambia National Union of Teachers ZNUT is disturbed with recent revelations that 15 pupils were sodomized at a known private schools in Chibombo district. ZNUT spokesperson Joe Kasaka says this is detrimental to the development of the pupils. He says teachers should ensure that full protection of pupils should ensure the full protection of pupils while in school. Mr. Kasaka has told QTV News that it is important that teachers adhere to the professional code of conduct. Favorite Kalando has more in the following report.
I want to be a soldier to protect my country.
Grow up.
A police officer.
Why do you want to become a police officer?
Because they catch bad guys.
Like who?
They catch thieves.
Like catch who?
They arrest thieves.
It is undeniable fact that parents in the country trust teachers with their children because of the role they play in human development. However, the recent cases of sodomy involving a teacher from Chibombo district in Central Province has unsettled some stakeholders who feel that something should be done to protect pupils. Sodomy in Zambia is against the laws of Zambia as it contradicts Section 158, Chapter 87 of the laws of Zambia. The Zambia National Union of Teachers is disturbed with such reports.
So that report actually has disturbed us a lot. Maybe what we can state is that the teacher in question is coming from a community school, which we can term as a private school. And apparently we are requesting the people in the security wings to ensure that they take this matter to court so that this teacher is prosecuted as quickly as possible. These are the elements that we are saying are not for the teaching profession.
Founder and director of Great North Road Academy, Rosia Siatwambo, had this appeal to the teachers.
The teaching profession demands that when you're a teacher, you are a role model. And a model, you are talking about a person whom even young people and other people are looking up to for their solutions. So when we're teaching, it's not just teaching in class, but we're teaching also when it comes to our conduct, the way we conduct ourselves. Whatever we do in our day-to-day lives, it has got an impact on the lives of these young people. So in any case, I just want to just urge and also discourage and even urge other people and even other teachers out there to say we hold lives. We are holding lives. We are holding the destinies of these young people. So even as we are handling them, let's be mindful to say any single disturbance on their lives might disturb even their whole future. So we are not just dealing with these young people for now. So we need to be very much mindful.
Meanwhile, the Zambia Police Service says the teacher who sodomized 15 boys appeared in court today.
Contrary to the accusations, police officers responded on time the same day the matter was reported and did all formalities in the case. The accused person has been charged with 2 counts of sodomy, contrary to Section 155, and 14 counts of unnatural practices, which is contrary to Section 158, Chapter 87 of the laws of Zambia.
And according to fresh information gathered, it is revealed that the accused person in this case, identified as Brian Kalongawalia, aged 36, is not a teacher, but a patron at Anchorage Orphanage School, responsible for boys' dormitories and their welfare. Favorite Kalando reporting for QTV News in Lusaka.
Finally, in the news, the Zambia Bureau of Standards says it has seen an increase in the number of small and medium enterprises in the manufacturing sector visiting the Bureau for advice on how best they can improve their businesses and make them compliant. ZAB's Managing Director Manuel Mutale told Q News that this follows the restructuring of the Bureau in January this year. Mr. Mutale says that the inspection mandate of the Bureau, which was more of a regulatory function, prevented industry from freely visiting the Bureau, but that the situation has since changed after the inspection mandate was removed in January. He notes that the removal of the inspection mandate has become a good opportunity for the Bureau to interact more openly and closely with industries, and that this will help increase certified products on the market. He states that the Bureau is now closely working with the Zambia Association of Manufacturers to engage with players in the manufacturing sector through training and certification of products. Mr. Mtale has since emphasized the Bureau's commitment to supporting the growth of local, small and medium-scale manufacturers in the country.
The Zambia Bureau of Standards has been restructured effective 1st of January 2018. And for us in the Bureau, we see this as a very good opportunity to be able to engage a manufacturer. Just to refresh our viewers, the Bureau used to have the mandate of standardization, testing, but much more inspection, which was a regulatory function. Now, from our assessment, this regulatory function created an impediment where most of the manufacturers and most of the SMEs were not able to come to the Bureau freely. But with this restructuring now and the creation of the Zambia Compulsory Standards Agency, an environment has been created in the Bureau where any SME who wants to produce peanut butter, who wants to produce bottled water, who wants to produce some fruit juice, they can freely come to ZABS. Our focus now is to produce standards, to train the manufacturers, but also to certify their products on a voluntary basis. So we are quite excited as a bureau, and we are quite excited that we are now renewing our MOU with the Zambia Association of Manufacturers to make sure that we support Zambian manufactured products. We're grateful to the government through the Ministry of Commerce, Trade and Industry for initiating this restructuring, which will make the Bureau a friend of industry. It's very, very important.
Top stories in the news. Government says the Financial Intelligence Center erred by availing to the public intelligence information that should have been presented by the law enforcement. Financing Minister Margaret Mwanakatwe has issued a statutory instrument number 42, bringing into effect the Public Finance Management Act number 1 of the 2018. Ends the news. Good evening.